Hi everyone and welcome to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and today I am bringing you a viewer suggestion video, and the suggestion came from Donna and she said she would like to know where I get my inspiration for my artwork from. So today I'm going to bring you 5 different places that I get my arty inspiration. So let's start with number 1. It's a fairly obvious one and it is of course social media. In this day and age, if you're not a dinosaur, then you have access to the internet somewhere and it is a never-ending source of inspiration. I understand that it can be quite overwhelming as well because there's actually such a thing as having too much information and therefore too much inspiration. For me personally, I have a lot of different social media accounts. And I actually have separate ones just for art stuff, and I have personal ones. Now that's it's kind of a bit more normal now because I have the channel and the channel has grown, and I like to keep my personal life separate from my arty pursuits online. But I didn't actually set those accounts up for that reason. I set them up so that I had a place I could go to when I wasn't feeling particularly inspired and literally just overload myself with loads of pretty images and artworks and sculptures and all that kind of thing. So when I go into the likes of Instagram, which is one of my favourite places, I go into my arty Instagram account and I can literally just sit and scroll and scroll and scroll, and the only thing that fills my eyeballs is artwork. And it's a really great way to just to chill out and have a look at what's out there. And favourite places for me are Instagram, as I've just mentioned, some of the social groups on Facebook as well. You can pick and choose there, but there's hundreds and hundreds of them. So join a few groups and see how you get on. But you not only there can you get a lot of actual artwork to inspire you, but reading other people's stories and advice that's given out by other members in the group can be really helpful if you're struggling to find that spark to create something. I belong to a number of absolutely excellent groups on Facebook and there is a real sense of community, and 99.99999% of the people are absolutely amazing, and that includes some of you guys as well. You know who you are and you know what groups I'm in, and it is generally a very supportive community, and that's one of the things that can really fuel you up to go and do something. If you see someone that's really struggled with something and they post it because they're really proud of it and they're getting lots of encouragement from everyone else in the group, sometimes it makes you sit back and say, well, you know, like they've stuck this out, they've really, you know, put the time and effort in and they're dead proud of it now. I could do that too. So that's a really good way to sort of boost your inspiration and your motivation to get going with something. There's other sites as well, obviously, like Pinterest and DeviantArt, which again is that sort of influx of visual stimuli. And I find it's not necessarily a case of, oh, I can't think of anything to draw. But when you look through all these different styles of artwork and different mediums, sometimes it can just plant a little seed in your head for a concept for a drawing, and then maybe 3 months later all of a sudden it pops out and you think, yeah, that's a great idea. So I do think it's a good idea on a regular basis just to look through social media, not necessarily to do anything with it, but just let that information sort of waft its way through your eyeballs and, you know, imprint itself on your brain, and you may regurgitate an idea from that much further down the line. I personally love it because looking at artwork makes me a happy person, and that's why I have all these social media feeds that I follow, and it's colours as well. I've just got this thing, I love lots of colours, and I find that really helpful as well when I am doing colouring pages, when I'm picking colour schemes or colour palettes for a certain page. And that's something that sort of sets my creative juices flowing. So if you don't have any of these social media accounts, I highly recommend you go in and do it. And the likes of Instagram especially, you don't have to be sociable if you don't want to. I mean, there's nobody forcing you into conversations and that kind of thing. So if you are more of a kind of solitary person, which I am to a degree, then it's a great way for you to sort of just absorb what's going on in the art world without actually having to be nice to everyone. I don't mean it like that. You guys know what I mean though. You do know what I mean. I know you do. So absolutely get going with some social media. Create some accounts and just let it all soak in. It's amazing. Number 2 is quite an interesting one. Behind me over here, you can see that there is a bookcase, and I have bookcases down. It's really difficult to point and keep looking at the camera. I'm like, there's books down there, and if I just turn this round over here on the other side of the desk, you can see that there's bookcases in behind here as well. I have an absolute ton of books and I read a lot. I like eat books for breakfast, and for me that is one of the things that seems to like kickstart my imagination, because when you read a story, your brain is forced into creating the images in your head of what's going on in the book, and that is a really good way to generate ideas and to get inspired to draw or paint or colour things. And it's something that it's one of the ways that I find seems to do the most for me, if you understand what I'm saying, because your brain's having to do that work, and that sparks off ideas left, right and centre. I do have a memory like a sieve. I have multiple things going on in my head all the time, and one of the things that I really struggled with when I first was diagnosed with some mental health problems was the fact that my brain was turning over at a great rate, and I was like mega multitasking inside my head and I couldn't handle it, and I had to write everything down. I still do that, because when an idea comes into my head, see if I'm lying in bed at 11 o'clock at night and I'm reading a book and it sparks any sort of idea, I have to stop right there. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the middle of a sentence. I have a notepad beside my bed and I start scribbling down, even if it's just a couple of words, enough so that I'll remember later on, because even 20 minutes later, my brain's gone through about maybe 120 different thoughts or ideas or processes. I'm not going to remember what that idea was. So I find that really helpful, but reading in itself is an excellent pursuit, particularly things that are not necessarily realistic. I don't read a lot of fantasy novels, but they are an excellent way to get your imagination going and really push yourself to think about the colours of the things that are being described, how the landscape sits, you know, what the weather's like, and all those kind of things help set a mood, and that can really boost your creative streak as well. So I highly recommend it, even if you're not a big reader, and I know some people just don't like reading. Listening to audiobooks does the same thing, so you don't physically have to sit down with a book, but it's just something that I find is definitely up there in terms of getting the old inspiration going. So I had to pick the right day for this one. It's been absolutely chucking it down with rain the last few days, and this is one of the ways that I get some inspiration, and it's something that's actually really good for mental health as well as thinking about where you're going to derive your art inspiration from. Every day, regardless of the weather, I have to walk at least one dog. It's usually a combination of one or more of the three of them, and it's not actually the walks that I go on in terms of the scenery that gives me the inspiration. It's having the thinking space and that time to sort of just let things turn over in your mind, and that's something that's very good for your mental health, and it's one of the reasons that I like to run as well, because it gives you that headspace away from the hustle and bustle of your daily life and just gives you a chance to sort of wander to other places. And I quite find that a lot of the time that's when ideas come to me for drawings or paintings or even just a concept for a video, is when I'm out on these walks. So it's something to take into consideration. Not necessarily, I'm not saying you have to be out in the countryside or anything like that, but find a place that you maybe don't normally go to that's got a different atmosphere to what you're used to. So, you know, if you live in a city and you're used to having a bustle full of apartments or flats, go and find a park or a quiet part of town where there's maybe a cafe outside, and, you know, give yourself that headspace, because it's something that definitely fuels your creative juices. So I'm out with the dogs just now. I've got 3 of them. Pip's just disappeared, and I'm just going to show you a few of the spots on the farm when I go out walking that I find inspirational and have sort of crept into some of my artwork. So I'm just going to walk along a bit and I shall show you. So here is one of my favourite places, and this is called the Triangle Wood because, surprise surprise, it's shaped in a triangle. I just find this to be a very calm place, and it's really good in the winter. If it's raining, I can bring the dogs in here for a walk and stay reasonably dry. But there's just this, I don't know, there's just a sort of peace about this place. Normally there's tractors and machinery and one thing and another, and it's just a little pocket to escape into. Quite a lot of my watercolour paintings are of wooded areas, and I think that this has heavily influenced that in a lot of ways. And the landscape and the way that you see things changes dramatically depending on what the weather's like. So it's somewhere that I do find really inspirational, and it has crept into quite a few of my watercolour paintings. And if I just turn round now, you can see that there's this sort of tunnel of trees, and in the summer all of these branches, eventually they all blossom and you've got this sort of big enclosed green tunnel, and it's absolutely amazing. So it really is, it's one of my favourites. So we're now at one of my next favourite spots to sit and be contemplative and gather up some inspiration. And it's a lot more, I don't know, it's kind of a different atmosphere to being in the Triangle Wood, but it's kind of cool all the same. So this is our pond, and generally it's quite quiet down here, apart from when you have cows mooing in the background. But at the moment we have got a pair of breeding swans, and it's that time of year where they go and start nesting, so we have to be careful today with the dogs that we don't upset them. They are nesting kind of off to the side, they're not nesting around the main part of the pond, so, but when we get further around you'll see. I'm assuming that one is here and the other one is away sitting on the eggs or guarding the eggs or whatever it is they do. So, but yeah, this is just a really peaceful spot. Pip's going for a paddle. This is just a really peaceful spot, it's really nice. And as I say, it's generally quite calm, and it's kind of sheltered from the wind as well. And on a nice day like today, don't be fooled, it's absolutely freezing, but at least the sun's shining. That's good old Scotland for you. But it's just a really nice spot to come down. And I think during the summer, once it gets a little bit warmer, I think I want to come down here and actually paint some of the landscape now that my painting skills are getting a bit better. Look at these two idiots. Is that good job? So I find this a very inspiring place, and I think because it's quite pretty, it's quite sort of picturesque, and it's just a really nice spot. It's actually quite a nice spot for a picnic as well, not that I do that very often, but it's kind of cool. And I don't know, it just seems to spark a little bit of inspiration in me. And the birds are singing. And finally on to number 5, and it's a fairly obvious one if you've paid any attention at all to my channel and having watched the last segment about being out and about. I draw a lot of inspiration from nature. I'm surrounded by it on a regular basis. I chose to live in it, which I absolutely love. But even, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take you guys over here. Oh, tripod, sorry. But I'm just going to show you the view out the cave window right now, just so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Right outside the window, here's the desk and the mandatory cup of tea. If looking out that window, look at the colours that are there. There's all those rich greens, and then there's the yellow of the rapeseed field up on the hill, and the sky and the clouds. How can anybody not be inspired by that? It's just really uplifting, and I find nature absolutely fascinating. And sometimes I'll stop and, you know, study the shape of a leaf or the colours that have bloomed out in a flower. And I do it with the animals as well. We have a crossbreed of cow, and they are beef shorthorn crosses, so, you know, these kind. And they quite often have quite a patterned coat. You know, they have like patches or, you know, just some sort of markings on them, and they're crossed with Highland cattle, which is the great big long-haired, you know, stereotypical Scottish cow. And they have the most amazing hairdos. Some of them have got little short, like, sort of spiky doos, and some of them have got bangs or a fringe if you're in the UK. And you know, things like that as well. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying. If you've watched the 10 tips for beginners for drawing, I'll link that video in the end card and also in the description for you if you haven't seen it. One of the things I talked about there was opening your eyes out in the world and being observant. Don't get stuck behind a screen, and it is so easy to do, and we all do it in this day and age. We really do. We're all guilty of it at some point, whether it's forced because of work or otherwise. Put down your phones, put down your tablets, and go out in the world and open your eyes, and you will find inspiration is all around you. If you live in a city, you have a plethora of things because there's always stuff going on. So you don't have to live out in the countryside to get inspired. But I personally take a lot, and I think I'm very, very lucky to have that view out there, and it changes with the seasons, and it changes so dramatically. And again, that's just something that makes me think, oh, you know, I could paint a really bright picture with all these colours, with fields, and you know, it's absolutely amazing. We live in such an amazing world, and human beings are so complicated and fascinating that inspiration is everywhere. It is all around you. So I highly hope that these tips have been helpful if you're in a bit of an inspirational slump, and maybe you might change things up a little bit and see if you can get inspired too. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you back in the cave really soon for another video. Bye for now, everyone.